Mirage is the best Warframe. Well, okay, there's no such thing as a single best Warframe. It ultimately boils down to what you enjoy most in the game. What I enjoy is big loot, big numbers, and the complete and rapid annihilation of my enemies. Which means I like nukers. And in my humble opinion, across all levels of gameplay, Mirage is best in class. If you spent any amount of time in Sanctuary Onslaught, you've probably seen this build around, nuking the tile set, giving free XP to everyone in the party for absolutely no effort. It's utterly, utterly broken. The setup is simple. Get between 250 and 280% range, a little bit of efficiency, and then as much strength as you can fit. Stand in the middle of the room, use the energy well from Zeneric, kill a few things to get it started, and then just cast away basically anytime you have the energy for it. It's top tier in Sanctuary Onslaught, and it can be used in low-level relic farming, but be careful not to kill the enemies too fast in fissures, or they won't drop enough reactant to open the relic. The more strength you squeeze in, the higher level enemies you can handle, but this is typically only a low-level nuker, taking advantage of its truly insane range and damage that is just okay. When it comes to mid and high-level nuking, we have the true hidden power of Mirage, a slew of lesser-known mechanics and interactions that combine to create a powerhouse of a nuker. I've played long enough to remember when melee went through walls, and I was really sad when they took it out. Fortunately, there is still a way to do it. It's all thanks to Mirage's clones. The mechanics behind the clones is that when shooting, 2 clones will fire alongside you. However, when using melee, all clones will melee. With enough reach on your melee, the clones behind you can hit the enemies in front of you. Better yet, if you melee close enough to a wall with a clone partially phasing into it, the clone's melee will go through the wall, just like the good old days. With enough attack speed, we can zoom through maps with slide attacks. With enough damage, everything up to even steel path enemies die in a couple hits. With enough range, we don't need to aim or target specific enemies. So in effect, we have merged what should be 2 opposite concepts: melee and nuking. Here's how it works. I'll start with the weapon. I use the Reaper Prime because it has one of the best balances between speed and range on top of an excellent damage profile. There are almost certainly better options by now, but they don't come with a cute candy cane, so Reaper always wins in my book. For our mod setup, range is king. We use Prime Reach and a Riven that has as high a range roll as we can manage, again to allow our clones to reach everywhere around us and nuke whole hallways. Beyond that, a couple of attack speed mods, a crit damage setup, and we're good to go. Since we're already critting, Melee Duplicate is probably best in slot arcane-wise for a free 200% damage, multiplicative with all other buffs. We run Naramon for the Power Spike passive, allowing us to maintain combo counter more easily. As for our Warframe build, I'm first going to introduce the next section of the build guide first, because it's the same build regardless of whether you're melee nuking or using what I like to call. This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in Warframe. Sincerely. Big numbers? Got 'em. Pretty particles? Got that too. Ignoring nullifiers, arbitration drones, and just about every other annoying enemy mechanic? Got it. I'll start with our abilities. We use Hall of Mirrors to get our clones out. We subsume Shooting Gallery over our second ability for a big ol' damage buff to both our melee and primary, which also helps out our team. We use our third ability Eclipse by holding it down for a massive damage boost. We could also just press it for a 90% damage reduction, but personally my philosophy is they can't kill you if they're dead, so I run the damage boost almost 100% of the time. We ignore our 4 unless we want pretty lights. As for the ability stats we care about, we want a ton of duration so we don't have to constantly recast our abilities, and then we pack in as much strength as possible. We run all Umbra mods, which makes us tanky enough to kill everything without dying, usually. But keep in mind, even if you can't invest this much into the build, such as 2 Umbleforma and 5 red shards, it will still kill.
It will kill. It will kill. It'll kill.
We run enemy sense because, as you'll soon see, we don't aim at enemies so much as red blobs on the map. So far this seems pretty standard, but let's talk about the augments and you'll begin to see some of the interactions that make this build utterly insane. Hall of Malevolence is a nice little damage ramp up, nothing too special, but Total Eclipse is where it gets really crazy. It causes our huge damage boost from Eclipse to apply to nearby allies. You might notice our range is terrible, and so our allies are rarely going to be in the pitiful 5-meter range of the Eclipse sharing. But our clones are permanently next to us, and they count as allies for the purpose of this augment, and so the multipliers start multiplying. First our melee gets quadrupled by our clones, and then gets 6.7 times more damage after that, or more like 7.6 after multi-augmented stacks. And that applies to each arrow from the true centerpiece of this build, the Kuva Brama. Multi-shot is the name of the game. I am personally convinced that multi-shot is the most broken mechanic in the game, because it multiplies every other multiplier you have. What's better than one super powerful arrow? 15. 15 is better. This is because we have 2.2 multi-shot before Frostbite, which gives us 3.1, and then galvanized chamber stacks, giving us 4.6. But remember, 2 clones are firing too. That means per shot, we are firing 12 arrows at least, and slightly over half the time we are firing 15 arrows. Each arrow explodes in a 12-meter radius, each dealing base 50k damage, which again is multiplied by Shooting Gallery and Eclipse. We run Prime Firestorm to get the most out of our arrows, because the more overlapping AoEs we have, the more damage we do, and the more things we hit by accident. And to me, that's the definition of a nuker, killing things by accident. We should never have to aim with this build beyond targeting a general area. To that end, we use heavy caliber. If anything, the less accuracy helps us, because it allows our arrows to spread out more and hit more enemies. It's important that we're capable of inflicting the cold status effect for the purposes of Frostbite. You might have to do some jury rigging to get the base element of your Brama to cooperate and not combine the cold element into something else. The one issue the Brama can face is ammo, which is why we run both primed sniper ammo mutation. If you don't have primed, it will still work, and carrier. As you can see, this carrier build is crap. We run no weapons, so it doesn't get targeted as often. We only truly care about the ammo case mod for the Brama ammo sustained. But again, keep in mind, we still have that crazy Reaper Prime in our back pocket, if we ever run out of ammo, which we will, rarely. One other thing to keep in mind. We run Cautious Shot so that we're not constantly falling over when our arrows land a little close to us. But we can drop that in favor of Vigilante Armaments, and even more multi-shot if you are either comfortable with just always aiming further away, or if you're playing with a friend who can give you overguard, such as Frost or Dante, or otherwise give knockdown immunity like Corvex. That extra 60% multi-shot gives us 15 arrows per shot with a chance for 18. Finally, and completely optionally, we can run Grimoire with the Vohm incantation for a tiny bit of extra power strength. I constantly forget to actually use it, but if you want it, it's there. We max fire rates so that we can charge the alt fire, and just fire and forget to enjoy the extra ability power. We also run multi-shot because pretty orbs. So we're not the tankiest, we can die, but playing with a party, public or otherwise, mitigates that risk almost completely since things die so quickly, and as long as you don't have a full steel path zone aiming at you and only you, you're good to go. And you have pretty explosions to look at, so what more could you want?